Hello, this is Congressman Brad Sherman, live from Washington, D.C. We're about to start another one of our town hall meetings. First, a little logistics. Please write down the following number, 855-920-0548. Once again, that's 855-920-0548. If we get disconnected for any reason, just dial that number and you'll be back in our telephone town hall. Our next telephone town hall will be in mid-May. We don't have an exact date, but what you do is you go to bradsherman.house.gov and you can learn of the date for our next town hall, which will be in mid-May, and you can suggest a written question and you can RSVP. Another important part of logistics is that if you want to ask a question, you dial *3. Now, if you dial *3, you'll be connected to my staff. If you have a personal issue, some problem with a federal agency, they'll help you. But if, like most people who are dialing *3, you want to, you can be put in the queue to ask a question that our whole district will hear. Your question would be heard by thousands of residents from the West and South San Fernando Valley and parts of the West Side that are now part of our district. Again, that website is bradsherman.house for House of Representatives.gov. Now, we'll be taking questions orally. I'll be answering questions that people wrote in for when they RSVP'd for this town hall. And even though I can't get to everyone's question, everyone will be able to register their views on important issues. Because we're going to be doing survey questions, everybody on the line can press a button on their phone and register their opinion on a number of important issues. Now, I know that people will be joining us during the next 5-7 minutes, so I'll be a little repetitive. This is Congressman Brad Sherman, and this is our second telephone town hall meeting covering the 32nd District. That's a new district. Every 0 year, like 2020, we have a census. Every 1 year, like 2021, they redraw the lines of each congressional district. And then in 2022, we had the election in the new district lines. I'm honored that the new 32nd District has elected me. I have represented for a long time the West and South San Fernando Valley. And now, due to redistricting, they have added Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, and some other parts of the West Side, including Malibu. So if you're part of the West and South San Fernando Valley, you probably have gotten these calls fairly often over the last few years. If you're part of the new parts of the district, this will be the second time that I've invited you to stay for a town hall meeting. Now, we're going to be going until 8:10 p.m. If we go beyond that, our vendor charges us a lot more money, so we will have to close at that time. Once again, this is Congressman Brad Sherman's telephone town hall. We have a complex governmental structure in the United States, and a lot of issues are really issues of state government, and that's why I'm pleased that we're going to be joined by new Assemblywoman Pilar Schiavo, who was recently elected to represent the Northwest San Fernando Valley, as well as some adjoining areas. And this will give us a chance to hear what's going on in Sacramento, and hopefully Pilar will be able to stay with us and answer any constituent questions that come up that involve state rather than federal government. Of course, she'll be joining us at 7:30, 7:35, somewhere at that time. Now, I want to put in a pitch for our constituent service team in our Los Angeles office, located in America's best named city, Sherman Oaks, my hometown. We have on the line John Alford and Lisa Montano, and let me describe their work. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen. It could affect you. Could be a visa from somebody who's abroad who wants to visit. Could be Social Security or the IRS. If you have a problem with a federal agency, call our team at 818-501-9200. Talk to Lisa, talk to John. They'll work very hard. They solve your problem, and then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. I think that's an outstanding system, and of course all our services are free. Once again, if you're just calling in, this is Congressman Brad Sherman's telephone town hall, and we'll be getting to questions fairly soon, but I'm giving my opening statement at this point. And of course, our offices are in Sherman Oaks on Van Nuys Boulevard, just a few blocks north of the 101 freeway. Now again, if you want to ask a question or talk to my staff about a personal matter, you dial *3. And as I said before, we will be doing survey questions, so even if you don't get a chance to ask your oral question, you'll be able to register your views on important public policy issues. When I talk about our constituent service team, I want to put in a pitch to help them. If you don't have a passport, get one. If you have a passport, renew it, even when it has almost a year to go. Don't wait until you have a need for a passport. Some of you now and then watch hearings, and you may have seen me with Secretary of State Blinken, pushing him to improve our passport system. It is somewhat broken. It takes too long, so get your passport renewed long before you need to. But if something comes up and you need a passport fast, our office can often be of assistance. I want to put in a pitch for John Alford's work on the military academies. If you know someone who wants to go to West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, first, thank them for their interest in serving our country. Second, have them contact John Alford at 818-501-9200 in October of their senior year of high school. So very early in the senior year of high school is the best time to contact us. And, of course, to get into our military academies, you need an outstanding high school academic record, and you need an appointment from your member of Congress, and that would be me. I am, of course, here in Washington, D.C. We've got hearings tomorrow, including, and I'll get to this in a minute, a hearing with the Vice Chair of the Fed and others who were in charge of regulating our banking system, which, as you know, has had a problem, and I will get to that in a bit. But I am flying back on Friday, and this will be a very ecumenical period of time for me because on Palm Sunday I'll be at the St. Peter's Armenian Apostolic Church, and later on Sunday I'll be with the Sikh community for Baisakhi. Be celebrating the Passover Seder at Stephen S. Wise Temple on the second night of Passover. On Easter Sunday, I'll be at the St. Mary's Assyrian Church of the East. And on at least two occasions this Ramadan, I'll be attending Ramadan dinners. But I'm flying back on Friday to be with a group that you may be interested in, One Generation, which is having its 45th anniversary gala, and where I'm presenting a symbolic check for $75,000, which I was able to secure for them to build these alternative dwelling units, particularly for low-income seniors, chiefly in the San Fernando Valley. And later next week, we'll be celebrating at Pierce College, where I was able to acquire $2 million for their biotechnology education program. So this is a very early step where Pierce College, Community College, will be offering 4-year degrees, and they will be the least expensive 4-year degrees probably anywhere in the country. And of course in the biotech fields where there is strong demand for people seeking employment. A quick note about the banking crisis. I don't think it's a crisis any longer, but I do think we have a lot of problems to fix. As you know, bank deposits are insured up to $250,000. If you're a saver or investor, little reason to have more than $250,000 in any one bank. If you have anything close to that, thank the powers that be that you've been able to save that amount, but put it in more than one bank. If you're running a business, however, you may often need to have more than $250,000 in a bank in order to handle your business operations, to pay payroll. Imagine how much it costs to pay just 100 employees on a payday, especially if they're paid only once a month. So we will be discussing a number of problems. One of those is that Silicon Valley Bank required businesses to have all their money at that one bank. So instead of the business being able to diversify and spread its risk among several banks, they're required to be at just one. Another problem is that Silicon Valley Bank invested in long-term treasury bonds. I know treasury bonds sounds very secure, and I'm happy to get into this more if we get a question about it, but you can lose money on treasury bonds if they're long-term, because if you buy a bond when they're yielding 2% and economic conditions change and today's bonds are yielding 4.5%, the value of that bond has gone down. And Silicon Valley Bank, I think, understood this well, but they thought they could make more money by taking some risks, and they ended up losing the bank. This crisis will end up costing about $20 billion. That money will be collected from a special assessment on all banks in this country, or most banks. Some of the smallest may be excluded. So this is not like we solve this problem at no cost. That assessment of banks may cause them to pay about 0.25% less on their certificates of deposit, or 1/8% less on their certificates of deposit than they would otherwise. I think the regulators really made a mistake. The regulators have testified, and I've got their opening statement tomorrow saying that the bank didn't follow their advice. Well, regulators aren't supposed to just give advice. They're not consultants. Regulators are supposed to force you to be secure in how you run the bank, and if they give you advice on if they give the bank advice on how to do that, and the bank ignores that advice, they have to demand that the bank follow it, or of course face a shutdown. This bank took risks. Had those risks panned out, big bonuses would have been available. The risks did not pan out, and there has been a cost to our economy. Not only the $20 billion, the second bank went under. That is going to lead to assessments on banks of another $2 billion. But the big effect is a slowdown in our economy, the worry of investors not putting their money as much in the local banks, which I think are the best banks to finance local businesses, and a skittishness about banks and making loans. That's all slowed down our economy. If there's a silver lining, it is that in an inflationary time, it's thought that you need to slow down the economy, but this is not the way to do it. In any way, that's more than some of you wanted to hear about the banking issues, although others may want more. Ask a question. We're also having hearings on Ukraine. Happy to talk about the Ukraine issue. So again, if you want to ask a question, you dial star 3. And Don, I wonder if you can tell us who our first questioner is.
We have Carol from Winnetka, who is got a question about gun control.
Mm-hmm.
Carol, on now.
Hello, Carol.
I'm here. I'm so upset about this last shooting, and I want to know what you are doing to reach across the aisle to get some of these Republicans off their butts to let's get these AR-15s out of the country. It happened years ago when our senator, got a bill passed, and there's no reason why it can't happen again. Enough is enough, and I want to know what you're doing.
I talk to my Republican colleagues, but I don't control who gets elected in their district. I worked hard in school to get good grades, so usually I like to get good grades. I'm though particularly proud of an F that I was given by the National Rifle Association. The only other F I've gotten is I got an F from I'm the only member of Congress to get an F from the only organization that's promoting cryptocurrency and that rates members of Congress. But back to your issue, we're able to take a few steps, very mild steps, last year to close the gun show loophole with regard to people under 21. We have more support for those states that want to have a red flag law, which is a way for you to go into court and say, my son, my daughter, my mother is going through a tough time now and shouldn't have a gun, and get an order to remove guns from that household. But there are so many steps that need to be taken, including getting rid of assault weapons and getting rid of the high-volume magazines that my feeling is if you can't gun down a deer with 15 bullets, you should get out of the forest. We've seen in these mass shootings that the killer is able to just spray bullets in large quantities. When my friend Gabby Gifford was attacked in Arizona, she was a member of Congress doing kind of what I'm doing, only she was doing it in person. She had a street corner town hall, and the assailant was stopped only when he had to stop and reload. And the more bullets in the magazine, the less reloading is necessary. And finally, we need to close the gun show loophole. Everybody who buys a gun needs to go through a process to prove that they're entitled to buy a gun. And if you've been convicted of a felony, if you have a court order, if you've been dealing with violence and attempted violence, then you're on the list to not buy a gun. That list needs to be enforced. But in many states, it's a joke. Now, California has particularly good laws, but the biggest, really the only mass shooting in the district I represent took place 20 years ago, and Buford Furrow came from another state and killed people in Granada Hills, or shot people in Granada Hills and then killed somebody in Chatsworth. So I couldn't agree with you more. I wish I could say that my good looks and charm are enough to take somebody who's run for Congress on a platform of guns for everybody and get them to change their mind. I can't tell you that I've changed my mind. Been involved in a few political campaigns where we've been able to change who gets elected in that district, but I can't tell you that I've changed a mind in a significant way on this issue among my colleagues. Let's go on to the next question.
Congressman, we have Mark with a question about Postal Service issues. Mark, you are on now.
Oh, great. Thank you. I keep hearing that Joy is going to be removed, and the board has been changed, and I keep on getting emails asking me, do you want him moved, and then asking me for money. And I'm kind of tired of answering money. And
by the way, do you work for the post office?
No, I don't.
Because obviously the people who are most focused on that issue work for the post office or work for some mail processing firms. I get asked for money over the internet and on text all the time, but I had that not one focusing on the Postmaster General.
I'm worried about ballots and things like that, which he tried to mess with, and he's still trying to mess with it. So I don't know why he's not gone. He was a Trump appointee who tried to privatize the post office. At least that's what I was getting from the whole situation. And I was hoping he would be gone.
If I was on that board, I would not vote to keep him there. The Postal Board of Governors changes slowly, so most of the appointees there are, I believe, or nearly all, nearly half, or over half, are Trump appointees. I am confident that once we get a clear majority of Biden appointees, we'll get somebody a little bit more dedicated to preserving the post office. But I doubt very much whether sending money to whoever's sending you these emails is going to change the situation. Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question about the VA from Edward. Edward, you are on now.
Congressman Sherman, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm a veteran. I live in a veterans home here in West LA. I am a veteran, but I just want you to know, you being a congressman, I want you to keep putting pressure on the VA to finish the job of the guys here on the VA housing for the homeless veterans, because Building 207 here, they're doing it is beautiful. They really it's even better than our veterans home. I'm very impressed. But no, you could do it. Just keep putting pressure on the VA. And number two, I'm a veteran here. I live on a fixed income, but I'm just saying, please don't let Congress mess with Social Security. And I will take your answer. Thank you very much.
I couldn't agree more on Social Security, and I couldn't agree with you more on the need to push the VA to complete what, if memory serves me right, is the construction of 2,600 housing units. They are behind their schedule. They've shown recent progress over the last 6 months. They've done more than they had done before, and they will be hearing from me often, both to compliment them when they get something done and to push them, because I don't have to tell you there are a lot of veterans in LA County that need housing. As for Social Security, absolutely, we have got to protect it, and it's under attack. Really, two things to be concerned about. One is, that you've got this fight about the debt limit, and Republicans want to take the debt limit hostage to deal with spending. Well, the only spending that they would take the debt limit hostage for is Social Security and Medicare, because the other spending, not a single penny can be spent after September 30th of this year that Kevin McCarthy doesn't approve, except for the, quote, entitlements or ongoing appropriations, which is basically Medicare and Social Security. So he's got all the control he needs on what's called the discretionary budget. They want to take the debt limit hostage so that they can then try to force concessions on Social Security. I don't think the tactic will work, but I do know that the tactic has already hurt our economy, and every day that goes on, it hurts the economy more because it raises questions, particularly to international investors. This is a country that can't get itself governed, that's talking about not paying its bills. If the United States were to default for even an hour a day on paying our debts, that could cause a worldwide depression. The entire world is keyed into the U.S. dollar and U.S. Treasury bonds being paid according to their terms. Now, even if they're paid according to their terms, if you have a long-term bond, that's a bet that could go up or down in value. But the solid thing is it will be paid according to its terms. That's why I've co-sponsored the Social Security 2100 Act. And this would keep Social Security solvent deep into the next century. We're only 23 years into this century. It would do so by imposing the Social Security tax on earned income of over $400,000. You see, right now, you're subject to Social Security tax until you make $160,000. Of course, most people don't make more than $160,000. But then at that point, Social Security stops. And what this bill would do is it'd say, okay, you're making between 160 and 400,000. We'll leave you alone, although those are big numbers. But over 400, that's got to be subject to the tax. If we do that, not only is Social Security solvent, we can also deal with the pension with the quote windfall elimination provision, which is the one that really screws our teachers and police officers in California and 12 other states. If you work part of the time as a teacher, police officer, local government employee in California, and then part of the time you're in the private sector, well, you contribute to Social Security when you're in the private sector, and then under this unfair provision, they take some of your Social Security back from you because you're getting a pension from your work as a police officer or a teacher. We don't do that with any other kind of pension. Some people are lucky to get a pension from their employment that does this. Aside from California local government employees, they don't lose any Social Security. The bill would also provide for larger COLA adjustments. So it's a bill that protects and enhances Social Security, makes sure that teachers and police officers and firefighters in California get the Social Security that they paid in for, and keeps it solvent till well into next century. And the reason I have that long an answer is because in addition to responding to you, I was responding to a written question from Kenneth Michelson of Sherman Oaks. That's one of our RSVP written questions, and I'll be answering some of those as we go forward. And now, on just a little bit early, we have Assemblywoman Pilar Schiavo. She was elected just last year. She represents the Northwest San Fernando Valley as well as much of the Santa Clarita Valley, and she's going to speak to us for a few minutes. And if we're fortunate, she'll stay on and answer any question that relates to California state government. Pilar, floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, Congressman Sherman. As a constituent, I have gotten the phone call to connect me to this town hall many a times and joined in to hear your updates, and excited to be here as our newly elected assembly member covering the Northwest San Fernando Valley. So Chatsworth, Northridge, Porter Ranch, Granada Hills, North Hills, and then also Santa Clarita and Castaic as well. So I just wanted to give a quick little update. We have hit the ground running and are super excited to work with our community to address any challenges that they're having at the statewide level. Our district office has been busy at work. Our first week, we were closing cases and helping people address issues with state agencies. And since we started, we have actually been able to return and help folks get $245,000 returned to them from statewide agencies where they had reached kind of a standstill. And so I just wanted to flag for folks, if they do need help with any state agencies like the DMV or EDD, Franchise Tax Board, Medi-Cal, please get in touch with our office, and I'll share our phone number now if you want to write it down, which is 661-286-2565. Again, 661-286-2565. You can
and Pilar, if people don't write it down, they'll have a hard time remembering it. But I bet you they might be able to remember your web page. Can they seek your help through your web page? And what is your web page?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if it's easier to remember, but it's a40.asmdc.org, and if you do /contact at the end, you can get in touch with us directly there too. So, but you can just Google us and you'll find the information as well, Pilar Schiavo Assembly. And we would love to work with folks and support them if they're having any challenges. I know we're getting a lot of calls and have been helping people a lot with EDD. We're happy to help with that or any other state agencies that folks are having questions, concerns, challenges with to get the ball moving if they've been at a standstill. I wanted to also just highlight a couple bills that we're working on. We have 20 bills, so if you want a full update, you can call our office and talk to our staff about it. Housing, homelessness, healthcare are huge priorities of ours. And I co-founded an organization working on homelessness and have worked on that, especially in the San Fernando Valley, quite a bit. And so that's really a big focus. We have a number of bills and that have passed out of committee now, actually, many of them with bipartisan support. One of them, AB 464, removes the barriers to the cost of IDs, either state IDs, driver's license, or essential, documents like birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, things like that people need to be able to enroll their kids in school, get on their feet, get a job, get housing. ID is a huge barrier for people to getting on their feet when they're experiencing homelessness or kind of at the edges of poverty. And so this is a way that we can help people get what they need to be able to get on their feet. We have a bill, AB 550, that would bring transparency and accountability to local government around homelessness plans, requiring an annual hearing on their plan to address homelessness. We know homelessness is a crisis, and we need to make sure that all of our communities, all of our local municipal governments are, making a plan to make sure that they're addressing it. And it's a public process so that the public can hear what this plan is, there can be input and transparency. And then the last bill around homelessness I wanted to mention, AB 519, is streamlining funding and the application process to build both homeless and affordable housing. Right now there's 4 agencies that people have to apply to get funding. There's different applications, different deadlines. If you get delayed, it means you go, into the next year and you have to wait a whole year for that funding source. And that means you're paying taxes on the property and higher costs for building and labor and construction materials. And so this will help us get housing online much quicker and cheaper and save taxpayers those dollars because we're reducing those delays. So those are some bills that we're doing specifically around homelessness. We also had a bill that passed just today, AB 963, that passed out of committee to stop the foster youth to homelessness pipeline and have the IBank at the statewide level back loans to allow for more investment in foster youth housing. So we're making strong connections around housing as a solution to homelessness, and that's a big priority for us as well. We have a few healthcare bills that we're working on, expanding perinatal services for folks, and also, a bill around concealed carry to ensure that there's a certain standard of training. The last bill that I wanted to mention is just AB 1217, which I'm jointly authoring with Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, which is just south of me in the Assembly. And this is basically to make it easier for restaurants to keep providing outdoor dining without having to pay an arm and a leg in, the permits and some of the requirements for all of these restaurants who really went through it during the pandemic and had to create these outdoor spaces, and we want to make sure they're able to keep them and it's not a huge barrier. So I just want to thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I look forward to working with Assemblywoman Schiavo throughout her term, and I'm sure several more terms. She is new to the Assembly, and I think comes with a new outlook and a new perspective. And I want to thank you so much for joining this town hall and for making your phone number and website available. And at this point, I'm going to do one of our survey questions. We do this one, each one of our town halls, so we can compare the results. Do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? Press 1 if you approve, of Biden, press 2 if you disapprove of his job performance, and press 3 if you're unsure. With that, I want to remind people that my website, I think, is a little easier to remember perhaps than the ones they give Assembly members, bradsherman.house, that's for House of Representatives.gov. So if you remember, I'm in the House, that Brad Sherman's in the House of Representatives, it's bradsherman.house.gov. Good way to find out what we're doing here in Washington. Good way to let us know that you're coming to Washington and would like some tours. Give us more advance notice. We'll set you up. And a good way to find out about upcoming town halls. With that, let's take another question from the floor.
We have a question from Neil from Sherman Oaks about the banking failures. Neil, you're on now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, Congressman Sherman.
Hello.
Hello, Neil Kaufman here, and we've actually met in person.
Oh, yes.
At the gym.
Hi, Neil. Yes.
Jim, in the event,
yes, that's LA Fitness on Sepulveda. Go ahead.
Okay, you did the advertising. Okay, I'll condense this. I wanted to know how the FDIC works in covering, as part of savings, CDs, and does it cover to date, though visible online, let's say, the amount that's not posted until maturity? That's part of my question. I have another part, which is how do tax-deferred IRAs get handled by the FDIC? And then,
Neil, let me just deal with two.
Sure.
The FDIC covers $250,000 of deposit. If the bank owes you more than that, you're not covered for any additional amount. And what they owe you is what they owe you on the day the FDIC takes over. So it's not, they may choose, and often do choose, to just honor the CD throughout its term, but they owe you what's owed, and I assume that that's interest calculated right to the day when they take over. It's one insurance limit applied to all of your accounts. So that's, I'm almost certain of this, that it covers your IRA, it covers your checking account, it covers your CD and your passbook, so that if you have $100,000 in each one of those four accounts, well, that means you have $400,000 in that bank, and only $250,000 is covered. Any uncovered portion, you are an uninsured depositor, and you may get 10 cents on the dollar for your uninsured. You may get 99. Hell, you may get 100% on it. But and then finally, when they declare that a bank failure is a systemic threat to the economy, they provide more insurance. So what happened was Silicon Valley Bank, it really looked like people were going to be limited to $250,000 of coverage. And if you're running a business and you've got your month's payroll there, you may have more than $250,000. If you're just trying to save money for your retirement, again, I mean, there are plenty of banks on Ventura Boulevard and plenty on Wilshire Boulevard, and you've got to, you buy a CD at this bank and then go across the street to the next bank. But businesses often have to have more than $250,000. People thought that they were going to lose a big chunk of anything they had over that $250,000 limit. Then, later that weekend on Sunday night, the New York regulators took over a second bank, Signature. One bank of Silicon Valley size is probably not a threat to the whole economy. Although if you viewed California separately, you'd say, hey, the effect on California is a threat to the whole economy. It's not a threat to the whole national economy. But a second bank creates a trend, creates a run, creates an atmosphere in which every regional bank in the country would come under pressure. And so by the relevant Sunday night, the FDIC, I think, correctly concluded this combination of two. You see, one's an aberration, two's a pattern. and that once you've had that pattern, that you had to step in and deal with it. As a result, the FDIC is going to be spending roughly $18 billion more than it would have otherwise. It's going to provide the full coverage. That is good for the economy. It's especially good for California. It's especially good for the innovation economy that was banked chiefly at Silicon Valley Bank. And it prevented runs on all the other regional banks. This ties into a written question that we have from Eric Peterson of Granada Hills. Do you agree that all customer deposits should be considered guaranteed by the government, formally or informally? And the answer to that question is not quite. When you have and the reason for that is, if you're going to provide full insurance, you've got to collect a premium that is sufficient to deal with that risk. I mean, most people have, say, $25,000 liability coverage for their car. If you want $100,000 or $250,000 coverage, you got to pay for more coverage, and the insurance company can't afford to provide you with coverage up to a huge number if you've only been paying premiums on a smaller amount. We should not informally provide the insurance, because then we're providing what does it mean to informally provide the insurance? I guess it means that you don't have to pay for the coverage, but the government steps in. And while that did in fact happen this month because of the systemic risk, it's not something that we can afford to do all the time. What I would like to see is an expansion of FDIC coverage to perhaps 1 million on the non-interest-bearing checking accounts, so that people running a business can feel safe at the bank that they're in. But I think if you're going to be buying certificates of deposit, it's put $250,000 in each bank and spread it around. And what we don't want is a circumstance where banks are paying more and more on the certificates of deposit and becoming less and less creditworthy, and saying, "Don't worry about our creditworthiness. You're covered for whatever you do." So I do think that we should see an expansion. The expansion should allow businesses to bank with confidence, and you're going to have collect a premium on the additionally covered accounts. Also, though, on a non-interest-bearing checking account, the depositor is not going to lose any interest because they're already at zero. So the bank would be paying for the deposit insurance, but couldn't pass that on to the depositor in the sense of a lower interest rate because you're already at zero. With that, what's the answer to the first question? Okay. On Biden, we've got 71% approve, 18% disapprove, and 11% unsure, and that is almost identical to what we were at our last town hall in February, where we were 72, 17, and 11%. My God, there's nothing more consistent than those answers. We're going to ask another question, and I'm going to skip question B. I'm letting my staff now go directly to question C, and that is, because this relates to what we've just been discussing, following Silicon Valley Bank's failure, you should know that we had tough regulations on mid-sized banks that were rolled back by a Republican bill that was signed into law. I voted against it, of course, in 2018. And so the question is, should we go back to the tough standards that we adopted in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, the tough regulations that we had on mid-sized banks? Go back, yes, press 1. Don't impose those tougher standards on mid-sized banks, press 2. Unsure, press 3. With that, let's take another question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, I have another Financial services related question, this time about cryptocurrency. Gina, you were on. Hold on one second.
Gina, are you there?
Should be on.
Hello, is Gina there?
Hold on one second. Should be on now, Gina. Sorry about that.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Congressman?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. Hi, I'm Gina, and my question is, what do you have against crypto? And I don't know, I just know you're against it, but I don't know the details of why you're against it. And if it were, regulated, would you change your mind?
Well, ultimately, for cryptocurrency to become successful, it has to become a currency. Right now, it's not a currency. I mean, you cannot buy a sandwich on Ventura Boulevard. You cannot buy a dress at Topanga with cryptocurrency. But it's a bet that it becomes a currency, and you've got to ask, well, what is the advantage that cryptocurrency has over the dollar? Because if you want to beat an incumbent in a market, you have to have an advantage. I'll give you an example, Jolt Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola is pretty well established. Your Jolt Cola, you have what for some people is an advantage. You got more caffeine. You put that right in the name. Jolt, I mean, it sounds like it's got more caffeine. Boy, it does. So cryptocurrency literally means hidden money. And that is the advantage that it hopes to have over the dollar as a currency. And it would be a medium of exchange for those who don't want the government to know what they're doing. Now, people automatically think, well, then it'd be the perfect currency for drug dealers and sanctions evaders. When I first got into this, it was because I wanted a tough policy to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, and our sanctions are reasonably effective. At least we're having an effect there. They're less effective for other reasons, but I've been very involved in sanctions policy, and it's because of the role the dollar plays internationally that our sanctions were pretty effective. But cryptocurrency can't make it as a real, to be worth anything like what is being said, what they aspire for it, if it just serves the sanctions evaders and the drug dealers. The big market is tax evasion. We have, according to the IRS, that billionaires, pretty much billionaires, are escaping $1 trillion of taxes by cheating. I'm not talking about finding some legal loophole. I'm talking about just plain cheating. $1 trillion a year. That means they have to hide $3 trillion of income in order to cheat on $1 trillion in taxes. And over a decade, that's $30 trillion that they have to conceal. And that is the game plan, if you look at it, for the crypto industry. Create something, get people to bet that they will create a tool that will be useful to that very big and very wealthy market. The fact is the U.S. dollar is an excellent currency. Yes, it has lost a little value due to inflation, but it's incredibly stable compared to any cryptocurrency. Those things go up and down, and there for a while had lost 2/3 of their value in just 6 months or so. So in terms of stability, the dollar is the most stable currency one can imagine, though it's not perfect. In terms of being a good medium of exchange, everywhere you go in my district, you can buy stuff with money, dollars. And in terms of a measure of value, everything at every store is priced in dollars. If so, it's a medium exchange. It's a measuring stick of value. It's a store of value. It works fine. The one thing that would kill cryptocurrency is if you really had effective anti-money laundering, know your customer laws. We have those laws for banks. That's why if you show up at the bank with $20,000 in cash, they're going to do a report. And I'll tell you now, if you've got $20,000 in cash from something illegal and you put it in the bank, you stand a decent chance of being caught. Not that providing advice to people who have committed felonies is what these town halls are all about, but there's a little bit of free advice. And the proof of the effectiveness is what Sam Bankman-Fried did. We know that he's able to hide his money from his creditors because it's in crypto. And just today it was announced that he had tried to bribe Chinese officials to the tune of, it was at least many, many millions of dollars, and he used crypto to do it. So Sam Bankman-Fried, who is certainly the most famous expert on crypto, thought crypto was the best way to engage in bribery, which happens, although he's bribing Chinese officials, that happens to be a violation of U.S. law. So I don't see a need for a new currency. And then finally, as an investment, I want people to invest in companies that grow America's economy. Buy stock. If you don't want, if you don't want to take that risk, put your money in the bank where it can be lent out, but your money is secure. If instead people take that willingness to invest and put it into crypto, it doesn't go to help U.S. businesses. So that's why I'm the only member of Congress to get an F from the only pro-crypto organization that rates members of Congress. We've got answers to our last question. Following the SBV failure, do you support reinstating the tough rules? Yes, 74%, 6% for no, and unsure 20%. Let's do another survey question. And what I'll actually do is first I'll answer the question of Jonathan Riazil of Chatsworth. And he asks, what exactly have the billions of dollars that we have sent to Ukraine done, and how have they been spent? And what is the long-term goal and strategy of the United States in this, and what do we stand to gain, if anything, from it? We have sent, actually reaching the Ukraine, about $75 billion. About half of that has gone to military support. The other half has been to keep Ukraine functioning. We have approved at the congressional level $113 billion in total. Not all of that has been spent. As to what is the goal first and foremost was to prevent unlimited conquests by Putin. If we hadn't helped Ukraine, they would have crumbled. Putin would have, and it was clearly his intention to take over all of Ukraine. If he had been able to do that easily and in a few weeks, he'd move on to the next easy target. And the immediate targets include Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, all of which are NATO members. So if you just make it easy for Putin or anyone else to go conquer neighboring countries, you invite the conquest of neighboring countries. So what we want is the international law, where you don't just seize territory by launching a war of aggression. Ultimately, we need to bring this war to a conclusion. The Ukrainians believe that they can take back some of the territory that Putin conquered in the first months of this war, and we'll see how this develops. But what we got most from this is stopping Putin from thinking that it's just easy to conquer territory. And without U.S. support, there wouldn't have been any European support. Without U.S. and European support, the Ukrainian people would have regarded themselves as abandoned. They would not have fought hard and long. And Putin would be in Kyiv right now. And even if you don't think that that is terrible, he'd be looking for the next opportunity. With that, we'll go on to this survey question. And I've kind of expressed where I stand on it. This is our question D. When it comes to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, do you think that the United States is? Press 1, giving too much support to Ukraine. Press 2 if you think we're doing the right amount. Press 3 if you think we're not doing enough and should do more. And press 4 if you're unsure. 1 if we're doing too much, 2 if we're doing it right, 3 if we ought to be doing more, 4 if unsure. Let's go to the next question from the floor.
We have Miranda from Woodland Hills who has a question about human rights in Iran. Miranda, you should be on now.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, I have a question about, as a member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs, what you're doing to address the human rights violations in Iran and what's going on.
I've been a strong advocate of human rights in Iran since 1997. I think that one of my very first bills was focused on sanctioning Iran for the 13 Jewish Iranians that they had seized almost randomly in Shiraz, the Shiraz 13. What we see in Iran is just horrendous. I have supported and in some cases written every resolution putting us on the side of the Iranian people, every bill that helps fund democracy efforts in Iran. And I've participated in numerous demonstrations, both in Washington, in West Los Angeles, and in the San Fernando Valley. Recently, we've been inspired by the women of Iran. When we see this Kurdish Iranian woman picked up by thugs calling themselves a morality police and killed, it hit a nerve in Iran, and it's. I wish I could tell you that the United States can assure the people of Iran democracy and freedom, or even assure the women of Iran the right not to be arrested and killed for their hair showing. I think we're on the right side of history. I think we're doing the right things morally, but the government in Tehran is determined and in some cases bloodthirsty. So we need to be on the right side, and even worse, if you think this government is bad now, imagine what they'll be if they have nuclear weapons. Let's see. I think we have time for one or two more questions from the floor.
Okay.
We have the answer. We have the answers to our survey question. Iran doing too much to support Ukraine, rather doing too much to support Ukraine, 10%. Doing about the right amount, 44%. Not doing enough to support Ukraine, 87%. Unsure, 8%. So somewhere leaning toward we should do more, while some think that we're doing it about right. Let me see. You know what? I've got one more survey question, and I think we can get this one in. If we ban TikTok, do you believe other apps would be created to offer a similar experience, or do you think Americans who use TikTok will be deprived of the entertainment, et cetera, that it provides. So press 1 if you think some new app will come along that'll be just as good as TikTok. Press 2 if you think that banning TikTok would cause Americans to lose a valuable service. And press 3 if you're unsure. Let's go on to a question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have a call from Maddie or Matthew regarding passports. We also have a question from another caller about long visa times and difficulties in getting visas. But I think this question is about passports.
Let's take the passports.
You are on now.
Hi, thank you so much. This is Matthew, and I have a question. I'm in the travel business, and I am having many situations where clients, even before the delay warning was put out, are not getting their passports back quickly for renewals or requests for new passports. And I did see your statement with Secretary Blinken earlier this week, or last week, as well as what you mentioned at the opening. But what can be put in place, because this is really impacting businesses, it's impacting travelers. I have travelers who have to cancel their trips because they cannot get their passports in a respectful amount of time. And what else besides, renewing a passport a year early can people do to affect a faster turnaround? Thank you.
We can get people emergency passport visits to the federal building in Westwood almost all the time. The idea that you have to call your congressman and get an emergency and be damn glad that you can get an appointment that might not be at a convenient time and show up in person in Westwood with the traffic, that's not a perfect solution. If people many months before their passport's going to expire, renew it. The system is not completely broken, but it's so bad that I'm sure with many of your clients, they come to you and they say, "Oh, great, I want to travel in 3 months and my passport's going to expire." And also keep in mind, you may think, "Oh, my passport doesn't expire till June. I'll just take that, I'll be fine for my May trip." Other countries won't accept the American passport, many of them, if it's going to expire in a few months. They're worried, believe it or not, about us overstaying there, etc. And so you'll have somebody and they'll say, "Well, my passport expires in June. Book me a ticket for May." And all of a sudden, Italy or Japan won't let them in because their passport's going to expire soon after they arrive, or within months of after they arrive. So we need people to, the regular process, the online process, works fine if you've got many months. If you don't, 818-501-9200. And then the next thing is, why in the hell do we have this problem? I've been pressing on the State Department. They will say they had a COVID issue, etc. That's long in the past. One of the problems the State Department has is the people who go in the State Department have master's degrees and doctorates from fancy universities where they aspire to draft treaties of peace. And then they go to the State Department and you're doing passports. And all your studies of the diplomatic protocols after the Napoleonic Wars are not particularly relevant. And so the State Department attracts people who want to do history-making diplomacy, and they have to start hiring people who want to get passports done. And they don't. And I've been pressing upon them for years. And the flip side of this is people trying to get visas to come to the United States for weddings, for funerals, for business deals. And you have similar delays, and you have bigger delays in some parts of the world than others. And it is just horrific. and trying to get the State Department to concentrate on passports and visas has been an uphill battle, and it's one that I have engaged in. I mean, if you heard those hearings, I think I was the only member of the committee to raise the passport and visa issue. Everybody else is, and correctly, making those big headline questions about Ukraine and Israel, et cetera, and China and whatever. And those are important issues, but for God's sakes, we got to get the passports done. I believe we have time for one more question, and hopefully I'll be able to answer. Oh, I do have the answers here for our TikTok question. The new app, 66% believe that some new app will be just as good. 12% feel that Americans will lose a valuable service, and 22% are unsure as to what would happen if we ban TikTok. As some of you know, TikTok is controlled in China. There have been incidences of the Chinese Communist Party getting its hands on a lot of valuable information about Americans recently, about journalists and where they were located, et cetera. And there is a move here in Congress to try to force TikTok to establish an American division that would be completely independent, or actually sell their American operation to investors that don't have to worry about the Chinese government. So we'll see what happens with TikTok. And boy, one more question. Let's see if I can give a quick answer.
Okay, Brent is actually interested in the Fed rather than the FDIC. Brent, you are on now.
Good evening, and thanks for taking the calls. I assume that I must be wrong in this, and I wish you would correct me. But is it true that the Fed members come from the banks that they regulate and are free to go back to them? And if so, doesn't that put them in a position of being somehow obliged to the people they're trying to regulate? That's it.
Yes. I mean, yes and no. The Fed is a mixture of its national board and its regional boards. Those who set interest rates are at least all selected by the president, confirmed by the Senate. But then your regional boards include a majority of members who are elected by the banks. So you have two separate issues here. One is, in what part of U.S. government should it not be that somebody you vote for gets to select the decision maker? You vote for a president, they select who's going to be the ambassador to Albania, they select who's going to be head of the National Fed, but they don't name the members of the regional Fed, for example, the one in San Francisco. Second is the revolving door problem, and you have that throughout government, and it's a tough situation because we want to get people with expertise. When people serve in government, they get more expertise, and then the private sector is offering the money for that expertise. And there are, and should be more, limits on what somebody can do after they leave government service. There are limits on what I'm allowed to do if I leave Congress. And to show you how bad the system was, the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank was on the board of the regional Fed in San Francisco. Not a good choice. Not a choice made by anybody who was elected, a choice made by the banks in California. With that, I think it's time for my rousing conclusion. We've got to wrap up. When I say goodbye, stay on the line. You're going to hear our voicemail system. I'm going to ask you to do two things. First, give me your best email address, even if I already have it, because under House rules, I need to get it from you in order to keep you fully informed. Otherwise, there are limits, and I want to make sure that I invite you to the next town hall. Second, you can leave a message. So if you weren't able to ask a question or express your opinion, leave a message. I will listen to them tomorrow. Not tonight. It's after 11 o'clock East Coast time, and I've got an interesting hearing tomorrow with the Vice Chair of the Fed. I want to thank everybody for demonstrating that people in our district are concerned with what's going on in their government and their world. I thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you in the Valley and on the West Side in the next 2 weeks, and I look forward to our next telephone town hall in mid-May. This is Congressman Brad Sherman. Thank you.